she has mentored over 50 startups globally. So we're going to hear a word from her recording in just one moment. So we're getting the video ready to share. And where is everyone calling in from today? You can write your message in the chat. Okay, so we are ready to share and we're gonna watch. I can't hear the audio. I'm not sure about anyone else. Can you confirm or not if you could hear the audio? No audio. Thank you, Kate.
Ecosystem and give my view of the structure, shareholders.
I can hear audio now.
Basically, what I try to do is to provide a holistic view of the entire blockchain as an industry, because I think it must be very complicated for anyone who's coming to the Web3 space now, as it just grew massively even in the last few years. So first of all, what is the blockchain ecosystem? Surprisingly, it's not just Bitcoin and Ethereum networks, as majority of people think, and it's not even connected to financial applications only. So blockchain ecosystem is the entire industry now based on the blockchain. It can be anything from companies specializing on finance, insurance, art, digital identity, gaming, healthcare, and the list goes on and on. So here in the blockchain ecosystem, you will see multiple types of companies and multiple ecosystem players and stakeholders, which I will try to give you a more overview during my presentation. First of all, what you need to know is that the blockchain ecosystem is divided into centralized part and decentralized part. So centralized part will be projects run by by single stakeholder. I a bit messed up the presentation. So centralized is projects run by single stakeholders. So it's going to be a single company or a single group of users, and they serve as a middleman or third party that helps to conduct services and takes fee for that. In the decentralized way, it's completely different. So here, the project will be run by multiple stakeholders, and usually it's done by governance and DAO system. So there's no one central power whatsoever to control any decisions. Also, decentralized projects usually conduct peer-to-peer services. In the current state of the crypto market, there is no pure decentralization, so everybody thriving to reach decentralization. But usually how it works, a group of people starts the decentralized project, then when it's nearly ready and at a certain stage of the growth, they're just giving it to the community to vote and form the decisions and form the future of the company and its products.
I'd like to ask everyone, please mute yourself if you're not talking.
Thank you.
Yes.
So as I mentioned before, the blockchain ecosystem grew immensely in the past couple of years. So here I thought that this will be useful for you to get the understanding of the industry, just to know how everything was evolving and major milestones that the industry was going through. Everything started obviously from Bitcoin, which was introduced to the public in 2009. Then Bitcoin started growing in popularity, and the first Bitcoin exchange, which was the centralized exchange, emerged. It was called Bitcoin Market. Then Bitcoin was on its own journey of ups and downs, but basically the public, the early adopters, started seeing immense potential in the industry. And in around 2014, MakerDAO came up with the idea of a stablecoin called DAI, which was the first stablecoin backed to US dollar in the ratio of 1:1. Then in 2015, Vitalik Buterin introduced Ethereum network as a concept. And this is known kind of as the start of the whole decentralized finance movement, and in general, the huge turn in the decentralized industry. Because Ethereum serves as the base for a lot of projects. Also in 2015, a bit later in the year, the first NFT was introduced on Ethereum blockchain. In 2017, there was maybe not the first, but the most popular game on blockchain, which was called CryptoKitties. And since then, it's known as the start of the play to earn gaming. Also in 2018, Aave introduced its protocol, which is the beginning of the story with decentralized lending and borrowing. In 2018 as well, Axie Infinity launched its first, and nowadays, I think it's one of the most popular play to earn games. So this was huge for the gaming industry because finally users could not only play on the blockchain, but they could also earn money while playing on the blockchain. By money, I mean cryptocurrency tokens. Also in 2018, which was very important, was launched the first decentralized exchange called Uniswap. So Uniswap is also based on Ethereum network. Later on, the industry started or continued its growth. And from important things around 2020, 2021, metaverse became a huge concept. So by metaverse, what people in the industry understand by metaverse might be a range of different things. But basically for the simplistic understanding, it's anything that the person does digital in terms of, it might be personal finance, it might be gaming, might be VR, might be social interactions, but anything that can be later on tied with a real life. And blockchain put everything on different networks. So you can use tokenization in metaverse as well. So here you can see different stages of the market, because as you know, crypto works in cycles. So here the cycles are much shorter than in traditional finance. And you can see the visual representation from the experimental stage, when just the bunch of people knew about Bitcoin and they tried to use it. Everybody who wanted to get into the industry had to be more or less very technical. Then there was the so-called gig initial stage, when Bitcoin became more widespread, when exchanges for Bitcoin trading emerged. And also the scene opened up to more people who were into profiting from Bitcoin. Then the market formation stage, which was the stage when Bitcoin was going through ups and downs, but new cryptocurrencies were emerging to basically tackle the issues that Bitcoin network was having and trying to perfect the space and bring cryptocurrency to the masses. From 2016 to 2018, there was an explosive growth of cryptocurrencies. And a lot of different protocols in the decentralized world emerged, and people started using protocols more for different purposes, not just trading. Then there was the industrial stage from 2019 to 2021. This was the time when industries and key players in traditional technology space or any consumer industry became interested by the blockchain and started implementing blockchain for making their processes more efficient. And currently, professionals are saying that blockchain industry is in the maturity stage. This is the stage when we have a lot of blockchain projects. If you think about it, there are over 20,000 different cryptocurrencies, which is crazy because 2 years ago, when I was just entering the space, there were just 6,000 cryptocurrencies. So if we think that more or less one project has one cryptocurrency, you can see the scale of the change in the industry.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Yeah, looking at the industry, right? And we've seen this grow from the experimental stage, you know, through kind of explosive growth, industrial. And now when we get into the industry maturity, do you think that a lot of the Web2 companies that we see today will be transitioning to Web3, or do you think we'll see an emergence of like new companies that will become leaders in the industry?
I think probably it's going to be both, because what I see now, there are some really interesting projects emerging from the decentralized space, which are trying to tackle issues in healthcare, for example, or in the supply chain. But at the same time, let's call them Web2 giants. So traditional companies as we know and see them now, they're also becoming more and more interested in the blockchain technology. So I see it more as a synergy than the rivalry.
Right. And then would this 2022 to 2025, would that include kind of a mass adoption, or would that come at a later stage?
That's a very interesting topic, because now in the industry, there is a lot of talk about the mass adoption. And I think it was always like that. The way I see the space, it's still, it's not very high barrier to entry, but you need to be really eager to learn to come to the space. So it's not so straightforward. And technologically, there are a lot of different implications and a lot of difficulties for people to start using crypto, for example, as the means of payment for our day-to-day life. Let's say it's quite difficult to facilitate payments for, let's say, coffee with crypto instead of our normal debit or credit cards, because you just need to prepare, kind of like set the ground. So everything has to be ready for the shift. So to be honest, I think it will take longer than the next 3-4 years, but probably in the next decade, we'll definitely reach mass adoption.
Yeah, I've heard that 2030 number thrown around quite a bit, but we'll see. True. Everything is changing so fast, and it often depends on what players come into the game and how easily they facilitate it. Right?
For sure.
Wonderful. Okay, please keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No worries at all. So how does this industry looks from the centralized perspective? So the kind of players you can see on the centralized landscape in crypto now are centralized exchanges, for example, like Binance, Coinbase, and Kraken, blockchain infrastructure providers like Infura or Alchemy, crypto wallets like Ledger and MetaMask. Here it's not fully centralized, but there is a large centralization element. Sorry, I can't hear you well. Can you please tell it once again?
I just muted them. Thank you.
Should I continue?
Yes, please.
Sure. Also, media platforms are mostly centralized in the space now. So from the top platforms, you can see Cointelegraph and CoinDesk, which are updating users about the current state of crypto. You can see crypto boards like CoinMarketCap and CoinGecko, where you will see the full list of different tokens, different projects that are around with all the stats for them. Crypto security auditors, like Certic, for example, who are making sure that the blockchains basically are not faulty, are efficient, and can serve their purpose. And I would say from centralized landscape, it's also regulators, which is currently the major regulator is SEC. Blockchain space is not regulated fully, but I think it's moving towards that direction. And if you read the news on crypto more or less every day, you can hear that SSE did this, SSE did that. So some tokens are deemed as security tokens. And basically the whole industry is awaiting for more clarity from the regulatory perspective.
We have one question from Sumit, who was just asking if you could kindly repeat a few examples of crypto security auditors.
Sure. So one who's for sure centralized is CertiK. Then there's quite a wide range of security auditors, but it's a mix between centralized and decentralized.
Awesome. Yeah. And I would recommend also all of you, this is obviously, it's so vast, the material we're working with, but I encourage all of you to go and also do your own research and kind of just look stuff up and familiarize yourself. Thank you.
For sure. It's very helpful, I think, in general, anywhere in blockchain, whatever topic you're interested in, it's very helpful to go deeper because, as I mentioned before, there's no single space where you will get all the information just because it's humanly impossible to fit it into one platform. So I think the more you learn and the more curious you are, the easier it's going to be for you to become fully immersed in the industry. So from the second side of the barricades, from the decentralized landscape in Web3 industry, I like to divide everything in layers just so it makes kind of a clear flow of information. So layer one will be projects who are building the main blockchain network, and this blockchain network is in charge of on-chain transactions. Layer two is any project that is building something on top of the main blockchain network. So it's either a network or a technology that is going to perfect the main blockchain. So here, the majority of work is done with scalability of the blockchain. So in terms of scalability, what is taken is the number of transactions that the blockchain can process and efficiency. And layer three will be the decentralized apps that are built on blockchain. And the decentralized app is probably what you will see in the blockchain space as the end user. Because here you will have the smart contract, so you will have part of the blockchain, and you will also have the front-end user interface.
And there's a question from Petra, who's asking what layer is Polkadot, for example?
Polkadot is layer one. So any blockchain, I think to make it more simple, the way I try to understand it, any blockchain that creates an ecosystem around it. So the blockchains who are inviting developers to build on top, who are basically partnering and trying to integrate the technology are layer one. Layer two will be anything that's on top of layer one that is making life of developers basically easier. And layer three is anything user-centric.
Thank you.
Sure. So here is an examples for layer one. It will be Bitcoin network, Ethereum, Cardano, Phantom, Polkadot, and others as well. For layer two, for example, it's going to be Polygon, Optimism. For layer three, I think one of the most popular dApps are decentralized exchanges, something like Uniswap or SushiSwap, for example.
Awesome. And where would something like a game come in? Like say, for example, STEPN?
Yeah, that's going to be also a dApp. So this comes to the next slide. There are lots of different types of dApps, just because, as well already discussed, the industry is growing massively. So blockchain is finding new applications. So first of all, as the blockchain space was evolving from Bitcoin, from trading, and from everything connected to finance, the first two applications are decentralized exchanges, which are top of the list. Then it's decentralized finance, which can be lending, borrowing, providing liquidity, or any sort of centralized financial operation that you can imagine moved onto the blockchain. Social media is also moving to the blockchain. Play to earn gaming as well is a massive category of dApps now, one of the top used categories. Governance and voting for different protocols, fundraising and advertising, NFT marketplaces, which are becoming more and more popular, digital identity. It can be anything from storing your medical records to storing your, let's say, passport information, and different applications working on metaverses. So for crypto stakeholders, here I try to give you more perspective into who is involved in the crypto space. So you will find here people who are both involved in building the Web3 space, like projects and developers working on the projects, people who are actively facilitating the development of the space with mainly the investment side or connections and advice side. This would be VCs and accelerators. Also, you have people who are involved in the space, not from the building perspective, but from the perspective of using the protocols, holding the tokens, investing in different tokens, trading, or simply being community members. Because essentially to be a community member, you don't have to do anything. You just can stay in different communities, learn as much as you can. And whenever you're ready, move to other stages. And obviously this would be regulators such as SEC, which are getting more and more involved into this industry. So that's more or less it. Thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to stay in touch, and we'll be happy to jump to your questions.
Awesome. Ksenia, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. I have a question here from Junad, who says, if an app uses a coin or as tokenomics, is it considered a dApp, or does it have to be 100% on chain to be a dApp?
What do you mean by this question?
I think, yeah, it says, Junad, if you could type in a little bit more to explain your question. And maybe we'll go on to Matrika and then we can come back. Junad is asking, where's the frontier? Where's that line between being an app and being a dApp? That's the question.
Basically, as a general rule, any app that is built on the blockchain is going to be a dApp. Like, let's say, it's a good question if you can be an app that just has a token. Really good question, but
yeah,
probably not. But I don't have the technical background, so it's difficult to tell with 100% clarity.
Yeah. I think this is also such an emerging market that we're starting to see ways that people are using the technology.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, if we gave this same talk in 5 years, there would be a lot of even additional players in use cases, right? I mean, now we start to see, go ahead.
The way it usually works in the space now, I was just thinking about traditional apps that have the token. Usually they launch the token, but you can not fully claim it for now. So for example, like Sweatcoin, where you walk for earning coins. So you have the token, but you cannot use it now because the company is still in the process of building.
Excellent. And here's a question from Matrika around marketing. And they're wondering, what's the difference between Web3 marketing and are the tools that are helpful for marketers, or what are the tools that are helpful for marketers to get an edge over other Web3 endeavors?
That's a great question. It's very interesting because it changed even in the last 2 years when I was in crypto. So when I just started working full-time in the blockchain industry, it was completely different. So let's say it was a bit like a baptism by fire. There was not so much emphasis on user experience, not so much emphasis on product design, for example. So it was more like built for core crypto audience. Now when we're going more and more into mass adoption, there is more emphasis on traditional marketing vehicles. But now I see the space in Web3 marketing kind of as a merge between Web2 tactics and Web3 tactics. Like, let's say some things will be very native to Web3. Others will be the same as on Web2 with a certain spin. So I think what changes is the number of stakeholders that you have, the number of different target audience that you can go through. And it also changes quite massively in the psychology of people, because first of all, what you do in marketing in crypto depends on the cycle of the market. So let's say if it's a bull market, you will use one set of tactics. You will use one budget. If it's the bear market, you will shift it, just because you will see the shift in audiences of people. Now with the bear market, for example, it became quieter, so there are less speculators, and people are more interested to see the technology, and they're more interested to basically use protocols.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I would also like to add, I think when I think of like Web3 marketing, I also, and again, it's kind of gray areas, but I think about DAOs and communities that they create, and how the community creates value to the point where the same members of the community are now going out and inviting their friends and colleagues and others to that community because there's value created there for them.
It's a very valid point, because I think this is where Web2 was taking practices from Web3, because I see now more and more for different brands in Web2 that they're also creating communities, and they're trying to implement different tactics from Web3 to either tokenize what they're doing, or provide rewards for people, or introduce different things like NFTs, for example, with certain utility that will be also creating a community of people around this NFT holders.
And from Oleye, we have a question. If you could speak a little bit more about governance and voting, and kind of where does that fit within the ecosystem?
Yeah. It's a very broad question, because basically this is like the backbone of decentralization. So governance and voting means that you are not having a centralized party that decides everything. It's essentially like voting for voting in politics, let's say. So it's not one person who comes and decides who's going to be the next prime minister or president. It's the collective of all the people of this country. So the same analogy can be used for the project, for example. It's going to be the collective of people who are staking the token and having a certain voting power and voting on different decisions. Decisions can be in basically any industry, from tokenomics to product design, to new features introduced, new markets opened. So anything you want to do with a project is going to be connected with voting. Now, as I mentioned already, there are not too many projects that are at the stage of 100% full decentralization, but there are a lot of projects that are moving to this side slowly but surely.
I would love to dive in a little bit deeper and talk about the incentives of all the different players in the ecosystem, which is really kind of, in my mind, what decentralization is based on, is that it's the incentives that drive good actions within the ecosystem, and really are helping, I think, lead us from an environment of competition to one of collaboration, and kind of understanding where we fit in, just in terms of like whether it's an exchange or an infrastructure provider, a wallet provider, media platforms, auditors. Like, can you talk about what are some of the incentives for the different players within the system?
For sure. So I think here, in terms of the blockchain space, it's two main groups of people. The ones who are building the industry or fostering the development of the industry, and the people who are coming to the industry as, maybe even three groups, people who are coming to the industry as users. And the third group is speculators or community members who are interested purely in the financial incentive through tokens and through the explosive growth of the industry, let's say. So for the builders, obviously it's there's a famous phrase, we're here for the tech. So people want to change the world, want to change, first of all, it started with a financial system, because the financial system is one of the layers of our life that stayed the same for many, many years. And nowadays, with globalization, we see that it doesn't work so perfectly, that there are lots of gray areas, that we have a lot of people who are unbanked or underbanked. So this is where it all started. Then basically seeing how blockchain helps in finance, people started finding application for the blockchain in other areas of our life. Let's say, for example, if we talk about healthcare, we provide a lot of medical data to different healthcare institutions. We don't have any ownership of this data, and we provide it for free. So using the blockchain and tokenizing everything, you can first of all be in charge of your information. Secondly, you can profit from your information. So basically, what I think is interesting about blockchain is that you can earn in different ways, and you can perfect the society through engaging different chunks of society who are not otherwise having the opportunity to benefit anyhow. So this would be for the builders. For people who are facilitating the growth of the industry, this would be investors and accelerators. That's also more or less the same thing, plus the financial incentive of investing into something that becomes huge and reaping benefits from it. From the user perspective, now I think it's largely the monetary perspective, because majority of projects, if you think about it, are still around decentralized finance. So anywhere where people can earn the percentage or rewards for whatever they're doing. But at the same time, you can think of gaming, for example, or metaverse. So people are just finding different outlets of communicating to each other, or different activities that they can do digitally. And the third group will be community members who are there for the sake of, let's say, learning, or token holders who are there for the sake of profiting on the token growth for different projects.
Right. And even entertainment in the form of gaming, right?
Sure.
Which is interesting today, that a lot of those traditional, I remember as a child we had video games, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was purely for entertainment. But now those areas are now mixing, where not only can I be entertaining myself, but I could also be earning money, right? Or I could be studying and getting paid to learn, right?
Exactly. I think blockchain incentivizes a lot of industries exactly in this way, because now, as we have a lot of information that we consume on a daily basis, so there is a lot of talk about fatigue, especially the digital fatigue. And I think people need some incentive to learn, to do something, to try different things. So blockchain can be the perfect vessel for that.
Yeah. We have a question from Eric, who's asking, what does it take to build a blockchain from scratch?
If sovereign countries' regulatory requirements demand that to obtain compliance licenses. That's a very technical question. As I'm not a builder per se, I can say what I know from the industry, from the projects I was working with. It usually takes a lot because it's a very technical task. And I think in the life of any project, it's good to decide straight away whether you want to build your own sovereign blockchain, or whether you want to use somebody's technology and build on top of it. So it largely depends on what is the goal that you have in mind, and what do you actually want to do with it. And also it depends on the developers you have. So if you have stellar developers, it's going to be I wouldn't say no time, but it's going to be shorter time than if you're still searching for the team, because now there's a lot of demand for developers in the industry.
Yeah, and I'd love to add, it really depends on what you'll be using your blockchain for, and whether you want it to be public or private. So I'll just give you an example, Eric. If I was a coffee seller in the United States, there might be maybe I want to track that coffee from where it was grown, when it was picked, when it was harvested, where it was transported, when it was roasted. I could even include the temperature. I could include anything. There were spices added to it, and that would all be on the blockchain. So when that coffee arrives at my cafe, I can tell somebody exactly where it came from, when it was picked, who picked it, etc. But for example, I may not want them to know how much I paid for it, right? So that may not be a fully public blockchain. So really, I think it looks at like, what is your model? What information do you want to be able to share? Right? If I was doing a voting blockchain, I would want the members to be able to write to that blockchain to say who their vote was, but I wouldn't necessarily want them to be able to read how everyone else voted, right? So I think in building blockchains, there's a lot of different things to think about. And I would recommend also, Eric, to look into Substrate with Polkadot, which is kind of like building blocks for building blockchains. And I can share a couple of links later with you. I know we're getting close to time, but I wanted to ask a question because there's so many people here who are getting involved that have their own wealth of experience and knowledge, perhaps in other industries or more traditional Web2 companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we think about Web3, like what are the different skill sets that we're going to need to kind of build towards this 2022 to 2025 and even further that you were talking about?
I think, first of all, for me, it feels like, as I'm coming from a traditional tech space previously, and the traditional consumer industries, for me, the blockchain felt like the startup scene that is taken to kind of the extreme, because everything is super fast. You need to react quickly to changing information, changing landscape. You have new projects popping up all the time, trends are changing. So I think you need to be very agile in the maximal sense of this word. You need to process a lot of information, and you need to have this ability to kind of clean out the information that you need to keep and the information that you don't need now. I think you need to be very curious also, because there's a lot happening in the space. And starting anything, obviously you cannot know everything that's happening in not just in blockchain, but in any industry in general. But here I think you need kind of a broader skill set than if you're doing something in Web2. Also, what I feel for Web3, I think different parts of the project work are very much intertwined. Like, let's say in terms of marketing, for example, if you're working in a traditional space, you will have different marketers for different channels. You will have product marketers, brand marketers. Here, as it's a startup culture, it's kind of, you need to be a one-stop shop solution for.
Thank you, everyone, from joining. I'm so sorry that we weren't able to ask questions today, but hopefully you got a chance to learn a bit more based on the questions that was asked on the recording. So thank you so much, and have a happy Thursday, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.